Well, after hearing about the controversy surrounding the new Superman movie, controversy so widespread it even reached me while on my honeymoon in Fiji, I gotta say, I am extremely confused. The debate about this movie should be over whether it's good or bad, because it's really teetering on the edge, I think, and whether it has a chance to revive DC and superhero movies more generally, not over whether it's woke or pro-immigration or anti-Israel. But let's do a quick spoiler-free recap and address all those issues. The movie begins about 30 minutes before you start watching, apparently, as you're dropped into the aftermath of the first fight Superman ever lost as he retreats to his Fortress of Solitude in Antarctica to recover with the help of Earth's yellow sun. Side note here, it's clearly warm in Metropolis, so it's either summer, early fall, or late spring, and Metropolis is in the United States. That means Antarctica is currently receiving 0 hours of sunlight, so yeah, Superman isn't helped at all by the yellow sun there. I know Superman usually has his Fortress of Solitude in Antarctica in the comics, so this is less a criticism of James Gunn's movie and more so one of Superman just kinda being stupid. I mean, at the very least, he should have another one in the Arctic Circle for the other half of the year. But let's not get bogged down in the mechanics of things. I mean, what am I, an engineer? Oh, right, that is what I am. Moving on. So, Superman gets his impossible dose of yellow sun while listening to a broken recording of his parents that was sent along with him on his journey to Earth, telling Kal-El the people of Earth are good people he's supposed to protect. I wonder if that broken part of the recording will in any way be relevant to the future plot of this movie. Superman then flies back to Metropolis to re-engage with the metahuman that beat him. That metahuman, the Hammer of Baravia, turns out to be controlled by Lex Luthor, and his only purpose is to beat up Superman. So I don't know what he's been doing the whole time Superman has been recovering in Antarctica. I guess just monologuing? And would he just have to have kept going if Superman had taken longer to recover? It's not as if Lex Luthor knows how long it takes Superman to recover after losing a battle, since, this is the first time he's ever lost a battle. I'm just laughing at the thought of him running out of material and just floating there, waiting for Superman to come back and all of the people on the ground just getting bored, waiting for the supervillain to do something. But it turns out the whole plan with the Hammer of Baravia was just to track Superman to his Fortress of Solitude so Lex could retrace his steps and gain access to the fortress to search for any dirt on Superman. And what do you know? The broken recording of Superman's parents that Superman seemingly never really tried to recover has a whole other part to it. One much more nefarious and which makes absolutely no sense given the first half of their message. But it makes Superman look like, well, honestly, it makes him kind of look like Homelander. So the rest of the movie is about Superman trying to clear his name while Lex Luthor tries to continuously undermine him and get the go-ahead from the US government to lock Superman up in a pocket universe, pitting humility, truth, justice, and the American way against power, tech, and mass misinformation. Nah, I'm kidding. Lex just steals Superman's dog, Krypto, which isn't even his dog, but whatever. When Superman confronts Lex about Krypto, Lex captures him and imprisons him in a pocket universe in a cell with Metamorpho, who he forces to morph into part kryptonite to keep Superman subdued. It's in this pocket universe where Luthor keeps an army of flying monkeys to basically act as Twitter trolls, fueling anti-Superman rhetoric on social media. Now, I'm not sure how internet connection works going from one universe to another, since they are now, in a different universe, but whatever. B, this seems weird. Not just because I'm watching a bunch of monkeys chained to desktops like the Initech office.
If you could just go ahead and make sure you do that from now on, that would be great.
But this just doesn't make sense for Lex Luthor. You're telling me the guy who's all about tech, using cameras and science to beat Superman, trained or bioengineered and then trained a bunch of monkeys to do his online bidding as opposed to bots? Also, part of Lex Luthor's plan is to take control of part of a country so he has access to petroleum reserves. If you can create a second universe from the Big Bang, why on an American Pope's Glock do you feel a need to take over part of a small country for resources? Basically, Lex Luthor's plan in this movie is so overcomplicated in ways that can open it up to be foiled when it really doesn't need to be. It's nothing compared to Lex's plan in Martha v. Martha.
Why did you say that?
But come on, he just needs to find the Fortress of Solitude so he can dig up something that gives the US government grounds to arrest Superman, or place regulations on him that he would surely violate, again allowing them to arrest him, but Baravia is treated as though it's an integral part of Luthor's plan when it really isn't. Or at least shouldn't be. So, Lois Lane has to team up with the Justice Gang, composed of Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific, but really just Mr. Terrific, to rescue Clark and help him defeat Lex Luthor.
Alrighty then.
So, what's good about this movie? Well, since I just mentioned Mr. Terrific, I'll talk about him. I don't know if this version is comic book accurate or what, but I loved him, just by virtue of him not being arguably the most obnoxious character ever put on a TV screen, especially considering it wasn't intentional like some classic annoyances.
Oh my god.
And that somewhat tongue-in-cheek praise really does extend to most of the characters and their casting choices. David Corenswet does a good job as Superman, but even more importantly, James Gunn wrote him correctly, especially for a modern-day context, as he gets upset and defiant over people questioning his choices, which he sees as clearly the morally correct ones, as he's just trying to help innocents and prevent the loss of life. It's endearing how he cares for every life, stopping a monster from stepping on a dog and even saving a squirrel from being crushed. Although I do wonder how far that extends, and at what point he's like, nah, not worth it. Like, he's not going out of his way to save ants, right?
What is this? A center for ants?
I get why he saves a dog, it might be a little kid's pet, but the squirrel felt a bit much. Rachel Brosnan's Lois Lane is really solid. She's an actual strong female character. Beautiful, resourceful, and dedicated to the truth. She challenges and butts heads with Clark, but not in the abrasive and obnoxious feminist way of fighting the patriarchy, platitude spouting with a mind-boggling sense of superiority, but in the way that she and him are making each other better. You know, the way good couples do. The CGI dog. I wasn't a huge fan of him. I love dogs, and I especially love when they don't die. That's always fun and refreshing in movies. I guess that's a spoiler, but come on, he's Kryptonian, it's not like anything can really kill him. But honestly, Krypto just became too much of a plot device throughout the movie, and I thought it was kind of lame how many times Superman needed a dog to save him. There are a lot of characters in this movie, but it doesn't feel quite as crowded as it possibly could. Unlike in Spider-Man 3, which really had fewer characters than this one, where the movie felt disjointed because it didn't know which character it wanted to focus on as the main villain, jumping from Sandman to Venom to New Goblin back and forth, James Gunn mostly chose his focal characters and elevated them, and took smaller characters and used them for smaller roles. Arguably too many smaller roles, but we'll get there. That's why Green Lantern was Guy Gardner and not Hal Jordan, because reducing Hal Jordan to a side character would be way too distracting. But that's what James Gunn is good at. Characters. That's why Guardians was great and why his Suicide Squad was so much of an improvement on the first one.
Why the fuck are you in your underwear? Tighty whities? Really? Now that's just racist.
The way he balances multiple characters and personality, giving each one the right amount of screen time. And you may feel like Nathan Fillion deserves more screen time, but that doesn't feel out of place in a James Gunn movie. Just like how in the Suicide Squad, he got a bunch of big characters and actors and killed them off immediately. Nathan Fillion gets a lot more screen time, and especially face time, than some other big names. Like the fact that Michael Rooker, Alan Tudyk, and Pom Klementieff all play robots with minimal dialogue, or the fact that Bradley Cooper appeared only as a brief hologram. Much like how Tarantino excels at writing dialogue, James Gunn usually excels at balancing multiple characters. The highlight of the movie, though, has to be Lex Luthor. He's kind of a more serious version of Elon Musk, but the way he slowly and subtly kind of unravels over the course of the movie while still maintaining his control over his master plan, however convoluted it might be, is portrayed excellently by Nicholas Hoult. I really think he's the best Lex Luthor ever, although that may be influenced by the recency bias of comparing him to Jesse Eisenberg's.
And I am... No, what am I? What was I saying?
And while one of the downsides of the movie is its humor, as it overextends just a bit into scenarios where it isn't warranted, that never infects Luthor's character. Now, I've been mostly singing the movie's praises, from its characters to its tone to its respect for the source material, so why did I say at the beginning that it's teetering on the edge of a good movie and a bad movie? Well, I've kind of dropped little hints throughout this video. I mentioned Lex Luthor's convoluted plan, Krypto being used as a plot device to bail Superman out of contrived situations, the humor falling flat sometimes and interrupting impactful scenes, and too many characters taking up time away from Superman. From the Justice Gang to Clark's earthly parents to reporters and ex-girlfriends. If you want a comparison, imagine you're eating a good steak. Ribeye, 16 ounces, medium rare, pan-seared and basted with garlic herb butter with a side of some Parmesan-crusted asparagus. Sounds good, right? Now, imagine every couple of bites, the landline phone rings, because this hypothetical scenario takes place in 1999, and you have to get up and go answer it to have a family member saying hello, before you can sit back down and enjoy a couple more bites of steak until the phone inevitably rings again. The phone calls on their own aren't bad. It's not like they're telemarketers, but they're interrupting your feast, and eventually your steak has gotten kinda cold. Honestly, the biggest indicator for me that this movie wouldn't have staying power is the conversation my wife and I had walking out of the theater. The number one thing we talked about wasn't the plot, or the characters, or anything like that. It was just about how many of the scenes were shot in some immediately recognizable landmarks in my hometown of Cleveland. From Public Square to the arcade and Progressive Field. And since Superman was created right here in the land, it gave the film an even further sense of faithfulness to the source, something I really do appreciate. I believe James Gunn knows and cares about the history and significance of Superman, and that care is evident in the film. I'm not sure Zack Snyder could even tell you who created Superman after making multiple movies about him, but the fact that that's the highlight of the movie can't be a good sign. I mean, there are lots of movies that were filmed in Cleveland, from Air Force One to Draft Day to The Avengers, and trust me, I didn't, and still don't, walk away from The Avengers saying, yo, so cool they showed East 9th Street in the courthouse. No, that was just a little added Easter egg for me and everyone else from Cleveland to get a little kick out of. But Superman is often so disjointed, as though it's trying to be a Superman movie while simultaneously setting up multiple spin-offs, that it's hard to focus on the actual story at hand. You're basically missing the forest for the trees. So, before I address the retarded controversies and get us all out of here so we can go pick up some steaks, because I know you're craving one as much as I am now, to answer the actual questions that Superman posed, I don't think so. It really didn't invigorate the superhero genre for me, and I don't think it gave new life to a DCU or whatever they're gonna call this go-round. DC still seems to be trying to skip the multiple isolated origin stories and go right to team-ups and cameos, putting the cart before the horse again, because they're not patient enough to wait a decade before the big payout. And as far as the controversies, let me address them right now. Is this movie woke? I really don't see how. If you think this movie is woke, you're gonna have a hard time watching just about any movie without getting angry at something. At which point, you are basically exactly like the pathetic, whining wokesters you love to make fun of on X. Is this movie pro-immigration? Sure, let's all follow the deeply rooted message of this movie and accept all white immigrants who speak perfect English and save the world. That message is sure to infuriate MAGA as much as Variety pushed at every possible opportunity.
Superman is an immigrant story, that it is political. MAGA today was getting a little upset that he called Superman an immigrant.
In fact, Lex Luthor's issues with Superman stem from the fact that he's an alien, an actual alien, like he's not human, which is kind of understandable. I mean, how often do we think of aliens coming to Earth for benevolent reasons? And Superman's point is that he is human in every way that matters. I know this because he delivers the least subtle monologue ever almost directly into the camera to that effect. Finally, is this movie anti-Israel? I assume this comes from the white country of Baravia's invasion of Jaranpur to supposedly liberate the seemingly Islamic nation, or at least the country of mostly brown people. So, first of all, Israel is not a white country. Even if you're a retard like Whoopi Goldberg who thinks that Jews aren't a race, fine, the majority of Jews in Israel are of Arab descent, plus another 20% of straight-up Arabs makes Israel a minority white or European descent country. I say this because if this Baravia-Jaranpur conflict is representative of something from our world, it seems much more obvious to me that it mirrors the Russia-Ukraine war. You know, an Eastern European country invading a much smaller country for imperialist purposes while the leader absurdly claims it's to liberate its people. But I guess if you can't see conflicts in anything other than racial terms, then you'd find a way to reach a different conclusion. Basically, the controversies that surrounded this movie should have all been quenched by the actual movie, leaving only those with room temperature IQs still arguing with Lex Luthor's monkey Twitter bots. While hopefully the rest of us self-thinking people can discuss whether this Superman movie lived up to the hype and the astronomical task set before it of reviving DC superhero movies, which you should put your thoughts about in the comments. Bye-bye.